The bloody audio issue. Right. Hello, everyone. Yeah, for tonight's stream, I was going to do more reading from the troll transcripts, more from Susan Atkins' testimony about what she said about her first lawyers and Bugliosi when she was first arrested and other stuff. Yeah. Caballero and Caruso represented Tom Harrigan as well, who was also associated with the case. Yeah, and he represented the LA case in the LA Times in a case against Charles Tacott. And the book was published with something to do with the LA Times as well. You get into that because her book as well. She was like conned into signing to have her book published and everything. But yeah, this I'm going to start right from when she first gets arrested. Barker, where was it? Barker Ranch was the last one, wasn't it? I think when they finally all got arrested. Yeah. And she gets taken off by plainclothes officers. But I'll get into reading that in a minute. And I'll make sure there's chapters if you're watching on playback. We'll just talk to people for a minute before I start. Yeah. Yeah, that's it. Mafia lawyers that she didn't even have a clue about. And it is strange because Caballero told her he was just the public defender. Somehow he got placed as the public defender. And he'd make sure he did again for her next trial and all this sort of thing. But we get into that, yeah. How times did she get? I think, isn't it about 3 or 4 times she got married? I think it's 3, isn't it? Yeah, I'm not sure though. I haven't followed. Yeah. It's interesting and suspicious that Gerald Condon was unceremoniously and with no consent from Condon or Atkins replaced by Richard Caballero as Susan Atkins' lawyer. Yeah, and I couldn't even find the first person who was actually the public defender. Yeah, I couldn't find a photo of him, so he obviously just wasn't famous or whatever, yeah. But yeah, he got replaced with him. And yeah, never explained who had, never to her anyway. But yeah, I'll get into reading it out, yeah. Right, yeah, I'll start reading it out so we're not here all night. Anyway. Yeah, and like I say, I'm going to start with just because it just sounds really sketchy. When they arrested her, they took her off on her own. 2 plainclothes officers just took her off. Sadie, yesterday I believe we were talking about when you were arrested in Inyo County. Yes. And then I believe you stated that 2 officers in plainclothes took you to a spot about 14 or 15 miles away from Inyo County Jail. Yes. Now they picked you up in Inyo County Jail. Yes. Before they took you out of your jail cell. Yeah. Did these 2 officers say anything to you? Before they came to me, I was taken out and had my handprints taken. I was taken away from the other girls and I was put in a room all by myself. I imagine it was a receiving tank because there was a little room that I could look right into the police station's office where the policemen were walking around. I saw a whole bunch of men running around, and I saw the 2 men that came and took me away. But before they came and took me, they left me sitting there for about 2 hours. Then they came and they just called me out and handcuffed me. Well, did they identify themselves? No. Did they have any guns on them? No, but I saw a bulge on the taller one, the dark-haired one, Mr. Whiteley. Do you know the name of the other officer? Mr. Gunther. Did they say anything to you when they took you out of this jail? Put your hands out in front of you. They handcuffed you. Yes. Now, did they take you to some place at that point? One took me by the arm and took me outside, and I asked him where I was going. They didn't say anything. He said, "You're going for a ride." And they took me and they said, "Walk over to that car." And they walked me over to a marked car, and I got in the back seat with Mr. Whiteley and Mr. Gunther. And I was in the front seat on the passenger side, and the highway patrolman was on the driver's side, and he drove. Okay. Now, before you left the Inyo County Jail, did they ask you whether or not you had an attorney? No. Did they ask you whether or not you wanted to talk to an attorney? Did they ask if you wanted to talk to an attorney? No, they didn't ask me anything. They just told me what to do. Did they give you any type of constitutional rights? No. They didn't tell you that you had the right to remain silent. Not then. So then they put you in this automobile and they drove you someplace. Yes. And approximately how far was this other place that they drove you to? You know, like I just come out of the desert and I don't know how far. It was far. We just drove and we were driving fast. I looked at the speedometer. It said about 95. Were you driving for a long time? No. About how long approximately? 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes? It sounds like that is what it would have been. So now they took you to another, what was it, another jailhouse or what? They took me into a small town and they drove me around and they made a couple of turns, and by that time I had had a cigarette. I was trying to roll my own, and Mr. Whiteley said, "Here, take this," and gave me a cigarette. And they pulled up in front of what was a substation. It said Substation of Independence or something like that, and they told me to get out. Then where did they take you from there? They walked me into a door. They had to unlock the substation door. They walked me like into a hallway. There was a door to the left and a big room and a desk on the right and the other doors, but it was like empty. It was almost like a storage place. And I just didn't say anything. I just did what they asked me to do. And they told me what to do. And they walked me into a small room. It was long and narrow, and it had a couple of desks and chairs with a heater on one side, and it was cold. So I walked over to the heater and turned on the heater with my foot, because the heater was down low. It was built in the wall. It was like an electric heater that switched on and off, and I could turn it on with my foot. I was handcuffed and I didn't have no shoes, so I used my toes. They told me I could sit down, and I told them I was cold. I wanted to stand up. Now, were you afraid at that time? My awareness was up. I didn't know what they wanted. I didn't know who they were, and they took me away from what they took me away from everyone else for. So you were out here in this lonely spot with just 2 police officers and yourself, correct? Correct. Well, I didn't even know they were police officers. Well, did they later identify themselves as police officers? Yes, when they sat down. Mr. Gunther sat on my right and Mr. Whiteley sat on my left. And there was like a desk in front of us, and there was a briefcase on the table on the desk, and they had pads out, and I believe it was. I said, "Well, what is it? Who are you?" "This is hearsay, Your Honour, and I object on that ground." The court sustained. That was Bugliosi. So they had a conversation with you, correct? Correct. They took a statement from you. What is that? They took a statement from you? Yes. How did they bring anything into the little room? Now, did they bring anything into the little room? A briefcase or a... There was a briefcase. It was a black briefcase. Mr. Whiteley carried it. All right. Now, did they at any time state that they were going to tape your conversation? Mr. Bugliosi, it is irrelevant. The witness, no. Sustained. The answer is stricken. The jury is admonished to disregard it. Wait for the ruling. By Mr. Shin. Now, did you see them with a tape recorder? Bugliosi, irrelevant. Mr. Shin, why is it irrelevant, Your Honour? The court overruled. You may answer. The witness. Later, after I gave them the statement. In other words, where was this tape recorder? I saw it being taken out of the briefcase. Mr. Whiteley told me he wanted to tape what I said, and I told him, no, put it away. Now, did these 2 officers give you any kind of rights at that time? They had given me rights before they ever took a statement from me, and I looked at them, and this is when they had identified themselves as 2 homicide detectives from Los Angeles. And I just looked at them and I said, okay. And they said, we are here on Gary Hinman. And I said, okay. And they said, do you know him? And I said, no. And they said, don't play games. And I said, okay. And they said, do you know him? And I said, yes, I knew him. Okay. Now, my question was, did they ever give you your constitutional rights when you went into that little room? Yes. And when I asked for a lawyer, they told me they wouldn't get me a lawyer until I told them what they wanted to hear. Okay. So now, when they gave you these rights, did you see them turn on the tape recorder? No. In other words, when they gave you the constitutional rights, and when you stated that you wanted an attorney, that wasn't recorded. Is that correct? That is right. You didn't see them. I didn't see them touch anything other than their pencils on the paper. From there, they took you back to Inyo County Jail. Yes. They told me, Mr. Gunther sort of looked at me and smiled, and he said, how do you like to fly? And it was a strange question, and I told him, hi. So then they took you back to the Inyo County Jail. Is that correct? Right. Then did someone later bring you down to Los Angeles? Yes. That same, about an hour after I got back to Inyo County Jail, Mr. Gunther and Mr. Whiteley told the matron at the jail to give me my clothes so that I could get dressed. My clothes, my jail, not my jail clothes, but my desert clothes, so I could get dressed. And then they handcuffed me and they drove me to an airport, and we got in a little 4-passenger plane and flew to LA. But we didn't fly to the LA airport. I believe we flew to the Oxnard airport. Okay, now just before they flew you down here from Inyo County, did anyone tell you why you were going to Los Angeles? Mr. Whiteley told me I was being arrested for first-degree murder. Now, did he at that time ask you whether or not you wanted an attorney, or did you have an attorney? No, not at that time. I had stated previously that I did not have a lawyer, and that I wanted to talk to a lawyer before I ever talked to him. And Mr. Gunther got really like a detective, like a homicide detective. You have seen them in the movies. That was what he was like. Mr. Bugliosi, motion to strike, Your Honour. The court. The answer is stricken. The jury is admonished to disregard it. So then you come down to Los Angeles, and you were placed in the women's jail, Sybil Brand. The first jail I was taken to was a little station where I was booked in. What town was this? Oxnard, I believe. But before we went there, Mr. Gunther and Mr. Whiteley drove me directly to Mr. Gunther's house, and Mr. Gunther got out of the car. Actually, Mr. Gunther's wife came out and picked us up from the airport, and Mr. Gunther drove Mrs. Gunther drove us back to Mr. Gunther's house, and they exchanged cars and drove me to the police station and booked me on first-degree murder and asked me what name I wanted to be booked under. Now, when you say the police station, where was this? Los Angeles? It was the Los Angeles area, but it was like a substation. I don't recall exactly what station it was. I was only there for about 10 or 15 minutes. So then later you got to Sybil Brand, correct? Correct, I was booked in at 8:53. So when was the next time you went to court? Oh, about 3 days later, about 3 or 4 days later. I don't remember exactly. It's in the records. And then you went, do you know what court you went to? Santa Monica. Okay, now, at that time, did you have an attorney? No, I was told I would get a public defender. Okay, then you subsequently got a public defender to represent you. This is all irrelevant, Your Honour. What is it that's irrelevant? It's all irrelevant. The court, do you wish to approach the bench? Mr. Bugliosi, yes, Your Honour. And Mr. Shin, yes, Your Honour. All right. The following proceedings were had at the bench and out of the hearing of the jury. Mr. Bugliosi, Mr. Shin, I think wants to bring in all the legal procedures and the mechanics and the representations by attorneys and all that occurred prior to her testimony at the grand jury. This is all totally irrelevant. This is the penalty phase of the trial. This has absolutely no bearing on any issue whatsoever, Your Honour. There is no issue that the prosecution raised. The defence cannot raise this issue. It is strictly a straw man issue that is being introduced. I don't know for what reason, but it has no applicability to the penalty phase of this trial. We never introduced her testimony at the grand jury. If we did, then I think there would be a valid reason for Mr. Shin going into the background. We never introduced it during this trial. The court, it would seem to be premature, Mr. Shin. Mr. Shin, Your Honour, this is all just background history of the defendant, Your Honour. We are not interested in just background history unless it has some relevance in this case. The fact she was arrested and flown in an airplane hardly has relevance. The background up to this time, she was put in the county jail. What background? It's not every fact that occurred every day that is relevant. It's leading up to it. It's foundational. I cannot just jump ahead. What's it leading up to? Let's get to the point. What? What's it leading up to? It's leading up to her representation and her grand jury testimony. She's going to testify she cooperated with. Are you going to elicit from her what she said before the grand jury? Maybe, Your Honour. Mr. Bugliosi, that is hearsay. Wait a minute, she testified to corroborate her testimony. Mr. Bugliosi, it's hearsay what she testified to at the grand jury, or what she told me the previous night. That is all hearsay. What exception to the hearsay rule is there? A prior consistent statement. We are not attacking. It is what the court said. It's premature. We're not attacking her testimony on the witness stand yet. Mr. Shin, I may want to impeach her. I don't know. Mr. Bugliosi, you may want to impeach your own client. Mr. Shin, yes. Oh, come on. Under the new evidence code, anybody can be impeached. Mr. Bugliosi, you can't put a prior consistent statement, Your Honour. It's hearsay, and no exceptions to the hearsay rule. Certain conditions must be present before a prior consistent statement can be offered. The court, at the moment, Mr. Shin, I fail to see any relevancy to the present line of questioning to this phase of the trial. You won't even let it in as foundation, Your Honour. Foundation to what? Show me some relevance. Well, I thought past history of a defendant, it's relevant in the penalty phase, Your Honour. That is what it's leading up to, Your Honour. The court says this has nothing to do with the defendant's past history. It is chronological series of events. It has no relevance to any penalty issue. Mr. Bugliosi, I think you've already shown her past history, days, San Francisco. Where's the cutting off point? Where is the cutting off point? Overnight and all that. The court, it's one thing for her to testify that she did certain things. It's another thing to elicit hearsay conversation from her. That's what you're doing. Is Mr. Bugliosi objecting to the hearsay that the officers told her? Also on the grounds of relevancy. Let's get on with the examination. The following proceedings were held in open court in the presence and hearing of the jury. Mr. Shin. Now, directing your attention to December the 5th, 1969, did you testify in the grand jury hearing? It's irrelevant, says Bugliosi. The witness, yes. The court overruled. The witness, yes, I did. Mr. Shin, and the testimony was pertaining to this case? Yes. Is that correct? Yes. Now, did you have an attorney at that time? Mr. Bugliosi, irrelevant. Yes, I did. The court overruled. By Mr. Shin. Did you have an attorney? Yes, I did. What was his name? His name was Richard Caballero. And he represented you at the grand jury hearing, is that correct? Yes, he was a court-appointed lawyer. Okay, now when did you first meet Mr. Richard Caballero? I met Mr. Caballero in court in Santa Monica after my case had been transferred from Malibu to Santa Monica, and I think it was the day after it hit the news that they had a break in the case. I'm not sure exactly what day it was. Okay, so did he later see you in the women's jail? He talked to me for about half an hour at Santa Monica in a little room. He told me he would come up and see me at the jail, and I told him okay. Okay, now, when he saw you, was there any discussion about this case? Mr. Bugliosi, irrelevant, Your Honour. Yes, the court overruled. There was a discussion about the case with your attorney, Mr. Caballero, at that time. Yes, there was. Is that correct? Yes. And in this conversation about this case, did you tell Mr. Caballero that you knew something about this case? Mr. Caballero told me he knew that I knew something about the case. Now, and I just looked at him. Yes, now before that, did you tell anyone at Sybil Brand about this case, your cellmates or roommates? I told them what I wanted them to know. And you talked about this case to other people, other inmates at Sybil Brand? I talked to two girls about it. What were their names? One was named Virginia Graham, who was not the woman who came here to testify. I know that for sure. The other one was Ronnie Howard. And you did relate them to some of the facts about this case, is that correct? I related to them my imagination. There were basic facts that I put into it, and over 60-70% of it was imagination. When you say imagination, are you saying that some of the things you told your cellmates were not true? That is correct. Just speculation. If it's speculation, was it speculation, imagination on your part? It was imagination on my part at the time I was telling them. It was very real to me when I was telling them. It was I was magical mystery touring in the jail, and they scared me, so I threw up a wall of fear. I did not think it would be that frightening to them after what they had told me about themselves. So then, did your attorney tell you that he heard that you told these cellmates about the case? Yes. Mr. Bugliosi, this is all hearsay and is irrelevant. Mr. Shin, she can answer yes or no, Your Honour. The objection is sustained. Mr. Shin, now in your conversation with Mr. Caballero, your attorney at the time, did he mention that someone said something about this case that you told them? Yes. Mr. Bugliosi, hearsay. The court, sustained. The objection is sustained. The answer is stricken. The jury is admonished to disregard it. Mr. Shin, you had a conversation with Mr. Caballero about this case, correct? Correct. This conversation took place at Sybil Brand? Yes. Now, approximately what month was it in 1969? It was, I believe, a day or two after Thanksgiving. 3 days after Thanksgiving. 1969. Yes. Now, how many times did you talk to Mr. Caballero concerning this case? That one time, and he told me he did not want to talk to me about it at the jail, that he wanted to take me out to his office. And I said, okay, I thought it would be a nice ride. In other words, he wanted to talk to you further on this matter. Yes, but he did not want to talk to me about it in the jail. He wanted to take me out of the jail and take me to his office and talk to me. Okay, now at this time, he was not representing you in this case, was he? No. He was representing you in another case, for Santa Monica, is that correct? Correct. Now, during your discussion with Mr. Caballero, did he mention anything about you testifying before the grand jury? Not in the jail. When he got me out to his office the first time, I believe it was the last of November 1969, right around the 1st of December. Let me ask you this. The records are clearer. Let me ask you this. How many times were you taken out of the women's jail to go someplace else? 3 times. 3 times. 3 times that I can remember distinctly. And how many times did they take you down to Caballero's office? 2 times. Now let's go back to the first time you went to Caballero's office. Is that located in Los Angeles? Yes, on Beverly Drive, I think. Now, I want to take you back to the first time you were taken to his office. Approximately what time did you leave Sybil Brand? It was after lunch. Was it in the afternoon? No, the first time it was after lunch, but it was close to dinner, and lunch is at 11, and dinner was at 3, so somewhere in between there. Now, prior to Mr. Caballero talking to his office, did he say that he was going to take you someplace? Yeah, he came out the first night. Before that day, he took me out there the first time and told me he had a court order signed by Judge Lucas to have me removed. Did he show you this court order? No, Judge Lucas, Judge Dell, Judge Keene, one of the 3 of them. He said that the judge had signed this removal order to take you to his office. Yes, he did show it to me, but it didn't mean anything to me at the time. Now, did Mr. Caballero give you a reason for taking you to his office? So he could talk to me about what Virginia Graham and Ronnie Howard had said that I had said. Any other reason for taking you out of the women's jail to his office? No, not the first time. I'm talking about the first time now. No. Mr. Bugliosi, calls for a conclusion, Your Honour. Motion to strike. I don't understand your objection. Motion to strike Mr. Caballero's reason for wanting to take her to court. Only he would know. If Mr. Caballero told Miss Atkins, she would know. The court. Overruled. Motion denied. Did he tell you any reason? Just he wanted to take me out of the jail. He did not want me in the jail. He said there were bugs in the jail, which there are, and there were too many police around, which there are. Well, at Sybil Brand, don't they have a cubicle where you can close the door and have a private conversation? Yes, but he did not trust the cubicle. When you left Sybil Brand the first day, now were you escorted by someone? There was a female officer and a male officer, and I was taken out, and I'm not sure if it was a marked car, but I was dressed in street clothes. Were you handcuffed? The first time, yes. And did they take you directly to Mr. Caballero's office? Yes. And when you got into Mr. Caballero's office, you saw somebody there? Yeah, Mr. Caballero. He was waiting for you? Yes. Did you see anyone else there? His secretary and people running in and out of that office? Did you meet any other attorneys there? No response. Now, this is the first time you were in the office. The first time I was told his partner. Don't tell me what someone told you. Did I see another attorney? Yes. Did you see or meet any other attorney there? No, I don't think it was the first time. The first time you saw Mr. Caballero in his office? Yes, I did see Mr. Caruso the first time, but it was just before I left. Okay, now, just before you left, you saw Mr. Caruso. So did someone introduce you to Mr. Caruso? Mr. Caballero. His full name, Paul Caruso? Yes. Did you have a conversation with Paul Caruso? I told him he looked like my grandfather. Any other conversation? This is the first time now. I was somebody else. Okay. Then let's go back to when you went to Mr. Caballero's office the first day now. Okay, the first time. Yes, Did he take you to an office someplace? Yeah, he took me in and showed me all around his office. He really seemed proud of it. He showed me his new carpeting and his new phony fireplace. Mr. Bugliosi, all irrelevant, Your Honour. Sustained. Mr. Shin. Okay, so now did you stay in the office with Mr. Caballero at that time? Yes, he locked the door. Where was the police officer? Outside the door. And you were alone in the office with Mr. Caballero? Yeah. Approximately how long did you stay in the office with Mr. Caballero? It was kind of in and out because he kept giving me Coca-Cola, 7-Up, coffee. So I had to go to the bathroom. So I had to go out of the door. Mr. Bugliosi, all irrelevant. Mr. Shin, she's only describing what went on in the office. Mr. Bugliosi, all irrelevant to the issues of this case. Mr. Shin, I don't know why Mr. Bugliosi is objecting. Mr. Bugliosi, on the grounds of irrelevancy, Your Honour. The court overruled. The answer is in. Ask your next question. Mr. Shin, will you finish that answer? I believe I left the room 3 times to go to the restroom, to come back in, and every time I would go out, he would unlock the door, and then I would come back and he would lock the door. And he told me not to tell anybody at the jail. The police told me not to tell anybody at the jail, and I never told nobody at the jail. The door was locked because they were supposed to be in the room where they could hear and see, but they wasn't. Okay, now, so you went into the restroom, you say? Yeah. Did the sheriff escort you? Yeah, the female deputy did. And then you went back into Mr. Caballero's office, correct? Correct. And he wished what? Go ahead. Now, at the time, did you have a conversation regarding this case? Yeah, he sat me down across from him and sat at his big desk, and I was going to light a cigarette, and he reached over and he lit the cigarette for me, and he said, "You're in so much trouble." And I said, "Okay." I said, "What kind of trouble?" Because I didn't know. Well, all he told me was 2 girls said that I said something to them, but he had not told me what it was. And I said, "Who was it?" And he held up 2 big transcripts about an inch thick, 1.5 inches thick each one. And he flipped for me very dramatically, and he said, "These 2 girls can put you in the gas chamber, can put Charles Manson in the gas chamber, can put Linda Kasabian in the gas chamber, they can put Patricia Krenwinkel in the gas chamber, and Leslie Van Houten in the gas chamber, and they can put Tex Watson in the gas chamber, if you don't do what I say." Now, he was talking about this case now, right? Yes. And you didn't know whether or not, you didn't know what he was going to talk about when you went to his office, right? No. I had a excuse me. I had a feeling, but I didn't know for sure. I had a feeling. Okay. So what did Mr. Caballero say after that? I told him, well, that is hearsay, because that is what it was, hearsay, I heard, she said. Tell me what Mr. Caballero said to you. He said, no, it's not hearsay, that the police know more than I think they know. And I said, well, there's nothing to know. And he said, oh, yes, there is. And I said, tell me what they know, if they know so much. And he said, I can tell you what they know. No, I can't tell you what they know. I can only tell you what I know, and I can't tell you what they know. And he took me around in circles, and I just looked at him and said, okay, I want to carry you back a couple of days now. Susan, did Mr. Caballero talk to you in the county jail? We were first talking about the Hinman case. Before going to Mr. Caballero's office, this was on about September the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, when he told you what he was going to take you to his when he told you he was going to take you to his office. Did he tell you at any time that he was going to take you to his office to prepare testimony for the grand jury? He broke that to me like lightning and thunder in his office the first time. My question is, but not at the jail. My question is, before taking you to his office, he never told you that the only reason he's taking you to his office was to prepare you for your testimony at the grand jury? Not that I can recall. You don't recall him saying that to you. I don't recall him ever saying that. If he did, he did, but I do not recall him saying that at the jail. Okay, let's get back to his office now. Okay, so you had a conversation, right, about this case? Yes, Then what did he say? He said, the only thing that will save your life and have a chance on saving everyone's life is for you to go to the grand jury and testify. And I said, before he said that, did he say he made a deal with the district attorney's office to save your life? No, he didn't say that. No, he said he would do everything in his power to make sure there was an agreement made with the district attorney's office. With the district attorney's office. And I told him, don't make deals for what? Okay, so now, before I go any further, was there any type of recording device in his office that you observed? Not the first time that I saw. What did he say to you the first time? He said he wanted to tape record what I had to say. And I said, for what? What did he say? My own personal references, because I don't take shorthand. And I said, who do you want to sell to? And he said, nothing, nothing, nothing. And he got very defensive with me. He said, all I want to do is use it for my personal reference, And he really got defensive with me. And I said, hey, I'm just asking you a question. So what did you discuss about this case the first day that he mentioned it? I discussed with him what I had told Virginia Graham and Ronnie Howard about this case. Was he taking any notes at that time? No. Was there any tape recorder working at that time? Not the first time I ran through the story. Well, did you run through that story twice for Mr. Caballero? Yes, he wanted to tape record it, and I told him, okay, you can tape record it, but I want only one copy made. As soon as you get your personal notes taken, I want it destroyed. And he promised me he would destroy it. He never did. He sold it. Mr. Bugliosi, motion to strike, Your Honour. The court, that portion of the answer wherein the witness stated he never did, he sold it, will be stricken. The jury is admonished to disregard that portion. Mr. Shin, question. Well, did you later find out that he sold the story then? Yes. He never told me he was going to sell that until after I signed something. In other words, he bought you a contract to sign later, is that correct? After I went to the grand jury. Okay, but he did in fact later have you sign an agreement to sell your story, is that correct? Yes. Okay, we will go back to that later. Now, approximately how long did you stay in Mr. Caballero's office? Long enough to tell him the story twice, to have him light me a cigarette, and to have him get me dinner, and to talk, just talk. He got you dinner? Yes. Did he take you out for dinner, or did he? No, he was kind of hung up on Hamburger Hamlet, so he sent over to Hamburger Hamlet to get me a vegetarian chef salad, a hot fudge sundae, sweet milk and bread. So then you had dinner, and you told the story twice. Approximately how long did you stay there? He had 6 or 8 hour release for me, so it was within 6 to 8 hours. Okay. Now, when you left the office, was it dark? Yes, about 10 o'clock, 9:30, 10 o'clock. So then most of your conversation with Mr. Caballero in his office was about this case? Correct. And what you told Ronnie Howard and Virginia Graham at Sybil Grand? Correct. And about me? And about you? Yes. Okay. So now, after this date, did you see Mr. Caballero again? Yes. He came out to me the next day in jail. He came out to see me every day. Now, did he say anything concerning this case when he saw you the next day? He told me, think about going to the grand jury. And I just told him, I don't want to testify to the grand jury. I have nothing to say to those people. Let the prosecution put on the best case it has. Did he explain to you what the grand jury was? He explained to me that this is a whole bunch of people that sat down and listened to what someone had to say about a crime that had just been committed, whether it was from armed robbery to marijuana. It's to indict people. Okay, so what did you say to that? I told him that I didn't want to testify. He told me, but you have to. I said, I don't have to do anything. And he said, you have to. And I said, why? And he said, to save your life. Okay. At that point, did he say he had worked out a deal with the district attorney's office to save your life at that time? He told me that he would try to make a deal. I didn't know of any deal until I met Mr. Bugliosi. We will get to Mr. Bugliosi later. Don't jump ahead of the gun. So then he talked to you about going to the grand jury. Yes, that was the thing that he talked to me most about, was going to the grand jury. He not only said it would save my life, but it would put a better chance on saving everyone else's life involved. You mean the other defendants? Correct, the other defendants. In case of an indictment. Right. And I didn't want to, and I looked at him. I was so tired of him pounding and harping on me. I just gave up to it and I said, okay. In other words, you were so emotionally upset that you finally gave in. Well, he had put me incommunicado. He had me taken out of the regular housing area and put in a lockup with a bunch of crazy people. And believe me, they are really crazy. They scream and yell and throw all kinds of things in every direction. And he left me down there for 2 weeks. In other words, you were in isolation. Isolation, solitary confinement. In other words, in the MO tank. In the MO tank. That is the mental observation tank, and it's not very pretty. In other words, you were in a cell by yourself. Right. And you couldn't talk to other inmates. If I would talk to any of the other inmates, I wouldn't be like talking sense because they were all crazy. Okay. So then you couldn't have any visitors. The only person that ever come up to see me was Caballero, and I kept telling him, would you get hold of Squeaky for me? I want to talk to her. Well, that would come a little later, he would say. And I said, I want to talk to her. And he said, not right now. And I said, can't you get her in to see me? And he said, no, I don't want you to have no visitors. And I said, I want to have visitors. No, he said, I've discussed this with the jail, and we feel you are not to have visitors, and we want to keep you away from the flow of everything. Okay. Now, after you told this story to Mr. Caballero, did you at any time tell him that the story may be true or the story may not be true? No, because I just didn't. To me, the story that I had told to Virginia Graham and Ronnie Howard was very real to me at the time. It would not look. It would not look at reality at that time. No, I would not look at reality at that time. Okay. Now you finally decided to testify before the grand jury. Is that correct? About, it was touch and go, because then they had taken me to the grand jury and they had me up on the floor and I would sit there and I would go, no, I don't want to go in there. And he said, it's all right. Everything is going to be all right. Everything is going to be all right. You're jumping ahead of yourself. I mean, when Caballero talked to you at Sybil Brand, after the day you went to his office, he came out and talked to you, correct? Correct. Now, at that time, did he convince you to testify to the grand jury? Yes, okay. Now, did he tell you at the time that he was going to take you down to his office again? Yes. Did he tell you for what purpose? To go over what I would say at the grand jury, and to go over the procedure of the grand jury, to go over the story again. Okay, so then were you in fact removed from Sybil Brand again? Yes, on or about December the 4th. Yes. And when I say December the 4th, that is one day before the grand jury, before you testified on December the 5th. Correct. That was at night, and the afternoon and night before. Now, what time did they take you out of Sybil Brand? About the same time that they had taken me out the last time. Who was present when they took me out? When they took me out, yes, a female deputy and a male deputy. Miss Mitchell. No, it wasn't Miss Mitchell. I don't know which one it was. Was Mr. Caballero there? Not at first. Mr. Caballero wasn't in his office, and I was taken upstairs to Mr. Caruso's office, and Mr. Caruso gave me a 7-Up. Okay, now you talked about Mr. Caruso. Did you meet Mr. Caruso for the second time? Yes. And did you have a conversation with Mr. Caruso? He told me that everything was going to be all right, and that everything they were doing was to benefit me and to get me out, to save my life, to do whatever, and whatever they were going to do with me. Did he at any time ask you whether or not he could be your literary agent? No, not at that time. In fact, Mr. Caruso never asked me that question that I can recall. Well, did you know they were going to sell your story? No. When did you first find out? About 3 days after the grand jury. Mr. Caruso came up and told me. Okay, so you were down at Mr. Caballero's office and you talked to Mr. Caruso. How long did you talk to Mr. Caruso? About 15 or 20 minutes. Was Mr. Caballero there? Mr. Caballero came in after about 15 or 20 minutes and went back down to Mr. Caballero's office. And when you say we, did Mr. Paul Caruso and Mr. Caballero and yourself go? Mr. Caballero, myself, and 2 deputies walked back, and the secretary walked back down the stairs and walked into Mr. Caruso's office. And Mr. Caruso was there too, correct. Then in his office, did you have a conversation? Yes, with Mr. Caruso and Mr. Caballero. Mr. Caruso, I believe, stayed up in his office. I'm not sure. I think he did. So when did they first start talking to you about a book that they were going to publish? This was after I'd gone to the grand jury and they started talking to me about the book. But did they discuss something about a book at that time? No. Okay. Now then later, did someone leave or did you stay alone with Mr. Caballero and Mr. Caruso? By this time, Mr. Caballero couldn't lock the door. The police had to sit right outside the door over a little ways just so they could see in, because they were two different police. They had two different orders, and all the police, none of them really know what they are doing. Everything is down, what they are doing. Then you finally talked to Mr. Caballero, Mr. Caruso alone, or did you just talk to Mr. Caballero? I just talked to Mr. Caballero alone. Mr. Caruso wasn't there. He left then, right? Yes. What did he say to you when he got you alone? He talked to me about going to the grand jury, and I was still battling with him on whether I should go or not. And he said he wanted me to meet someone, and I said who? And he said Mr. Bugliosi, and I said Mr. Bugliosi, and he said no, it is Bugliosi, and I said who is that? And he said he is the district attorney. I went what? And I froze. Susan, before we get to that, did you have a long conversation with Mr. Caballero before you met Mr. Bugliosi? Yes. You went into his office, and yes, I got kind of angry. So you had a conversation the second time now? Correct, in Mr. Caballero's office, before Mr. Bugliosi got there, correct? Yes. Now, how long did you talk to Mr. Caballero? About 15, about an hour, a half hour, an hour? In this conversation, was anything said about this? Yes. About this case? Yes. Was this conversation taped at this time, do you know? Not that I know of. When was it taped? I don't know that it was ever taped. At the second meeting, I don't know that it was ever taped. I don't recall ever seeing a tape recorder at the second meeting in his office. But did Mr. Caballero mention to you that he might be taping your conversation? No. So far as you know, your statement about this case was taped the first time that you went to his office. Is that correct? Correct. Now let's get back to when Mr. Caballero said he wanted you to meet Mr. Bugliosi. I told him, the district attorney, have you been talking to the district attorney? Mr. Caballero said, yes, well, of course. I said, I don't want to talk to no district attorney. I haven't got nothing to say to that man. He's a very nice man, Mr. Mr. Caballero was trying to explain to me that Mr. Bugliosi was a very nice man. And I said, I don't care if he is a nice man or not. I don't have anything to say to him. He said, all he wants to do is run over what you're going to say to the grand jury. And I said, I still don't want to talk to him. Let him ask the grand jury. And didn't you tell me that the grand jury was a spontaneous reaction, that when the witness got up there and the questions are spontaneous? And he said, yes. And I said, then I have nothing to say to the man. Let him ask me the questions from the witness stand. And he said, no, Mr. Bugliosi wants to talk to you first. So I said, okay. You know, there was no sense in arguing. The man was going to do what he was going to do anyway. Now, this is the first time you found out that you were going to testify at the grand jury hearing. This is the first time that I found out that it was for real. I mean, I really looked at it for real. That Mr. Caballero was going to push you into the grand jury hearing. Yes. And you didn't want to testify at the grand jury. No. Now, did Mr. Caballero explain to you that if you go to the grand jury and you testify, they may indict you? Yes, he mentioned they would probably indict me. He told you that. Yes, if the grand jury believed what I said, I didn't think they would believe what I said. Did he also explain that in the event that you got convicted, you might get the gas chamber? He said that I might get convicted and get the gas chamber, but he was going to do everything in his power, along with Mr. Bugliosi, to make sure I didn't get the gas chamber. But I just said, well, did Mr. Caballero at that time tell you that you had already talked to the district attorney? Yes. I asked him if he tell you that he had already talked to the district attorney. Yes. I asked him if he had talked to the district attorney, and that is what he told me, that he had been a district attorney himself for quite a few years, and that he was in the district attorney's office. He was a DA or something like that. Mr. Caballero told you that he was once a district attorney for the county of Los Angeles. Right, and he had a lot of influence with the district attorney's office. But did he tell you before you testified at the grand jury that he had made a concrete deal for you? He didn't show me no papers signed, nothing. I mean, did he tell you that? He told me he could not personally guarantee it, but he would do everything in his power, and he felt morally obligated, which are also someone else's words, to save my life, to do everything he could do to help my co-defendants if I was indicted. Well, did he explain to you what he meant by doing everything to help? Get me out of it. He asked me if I would want to plead insanity, and I said, insanity? No, just plead me not guilty. All right. Did he tell you that he had talked to? Yes, he told me he had talked to Mr. Bugliosi. Just Mr. Bugliosi? Did he talk to some other district attorney? He didn't say any other name but Mr. Bugliosi. That was the first time that you had met Mr. Bugliosi. Yes, he walked in. I think he was dressed similar to the way he was dressed now. Grey suit, vest. This was back in 1969, right? Right. He looked a lot younger then. Now, Miss Atkins, as you saw Mr. Bugliosi, did he introduce himself? Yes. What did he say? Hello. What else did he say besides hello? How are you? I am Mr. Bugliosi. He had a whole bunch of papers and rolls, big rolls of diagrams and pictures and all kinds of crazy things. Okay. Let's start from the beginning, Susan. I'm trying to take you from the beginning to the end now. Okay. When you saw Mr. Bugliosi, he walked in, he said hello to you. Yes. Did he show you his badge? No. Any identification that he was district attorney? No. So you just look at it. So you just took it for granted that he was district attorney? Yes. At that time you didn't know him from Adam, did you? No. Was Mr. Caballero in the office? Yes. Did he at any time leave when Mr. Bugliosi was in the office? Yes. Did he leave? I think he may have gone to the door for something, to ask one of the deputies something. I don't remember him ever leaving, per se, leaving. Okay. He seemed to be there all the time. Okay. Do you recall the conversation that you had with Mr. Bugliosi, now, from the beginning, word for word? No, just give me the substance of it. The substance of the conversation was that he wanted to talk to me about what I had said to Virginia Graham and Ronnie Howard, and I told him, okay, I have nothing to hide, and I talked to him. Okay, before you told him the story about this case, did Mr. Bugliosi advise you of any constitutional rights? I don't remember if he did or not. Did he say to you, now, Susan Atkins, you're going to tell me this story? You know you're in big trouble if you tell me this story. Mr. Bugliosi, leading question, sustained. Okay, did Mr. Bugliosi give you any advice, any warnings before you talked with him? Warnings? Yes, not that I can recall. That is long, it's a long time ago. He did not give you any advice at all. Not that I recall. He may have, I don't remember. Did he ask you why you were doing this? No. Did he tell you you were going to testify at the grand jury hearing? He told me he wanted to go over some questions he was going to ask me at the grand jury. What did you say? I don't remember what I said. All I know is that I went over the questions with him, and they were pretty far out questions. Did you want to discuss the case with Mr. Bugliosi? No. Did you tell Mr. Bugliosi that? I think I did. I think I told him. I did not have anything against him personally, but he was district attorney, and I did not want to talk to him. He was going to prosecute me if I got indicted, and I had nothing to say to him. Did Mr. Bugliosi say, don't worry? He told me he felt that if I talked to him and cooperated with him in the district attorney's office and testified at the trial against everyone, that I would be granted immunity. Did Mr. Bugliosi use the word immunity at that time? I think so, but he did not stress the point. He did not go on any further with immunity. Now, I want you to remember back now. The court, we will take our recess at this time. Ladies and gentlemen, do not converse with anyone, nor form or express any opinion regarding penalty until the issue is finally submitted to you. The court will recess for 15 minutes. Cool. Now take a recess. Cool, well, 48 minutes. So I was reading for a long time there. But yeah, that's pretty crazy, isn't it? Yeah. Right, you're talking about Susan. Yeah, she probably has fetal alcohol syndrome, yeah, because her parents were both drunks, weren't they, according to her book. So her mother did probably drink while she was pregnant with her. Yeah, sorry. I should take a break for a second. I'll just look at the comments, see what people have been saying. Didn't realise I was reading for that long. But yeah, the whole thing's sketchy, getting taken off by the police officers like that, but that was to talk to her about Gary Hinman. Yeah. Yeah, we'll never know exactly what Caballero promised Atkins or how he laid out the terms of the deal. And like most agreements of this nature, as was never formalised in writing. Well, I reckon they were just lying to her. I don't think they ever intended to give her any sort of agreement. So we've only got her word for what they said to her, because they would obviously have denied it, wouldn't they, afterwards? So we'll only ever know. Yeah, that's it. He's a very nice man when he beats his mistress and harasses his milkman. Yeah, that's it. Well, that's it. This she admits that everything she said to Ronnie Howard and that was imagination, or 60 or 70% of it was imagination. Yeah, everyone's saying it. Fetal alcohol syndrome and impulse control disorder on par with Charlie. Yeah, yeah, that's it. And she was already on a path before she met Charlie as well to criminal behaviour, wasn't she? She didn't just become violent out of nowhere. In fact, I've read so much out there, I might just leave it at that because yeah, well, that's crazy. Because she talks about the several meetings that she had with Caruso and that and Caballero, and there's more. Yeah, well, I could read out some more, but it'll be over an hour long. But they go into her book and how she was conned into her book. Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm gonna get to the. She said on different occasions that she stabbed Gary Hinman, and other times it was Bobby. Yeah, well, no, I think it was Bobby. Definitely wasn't it? It was Bobby. They were both full of shit. They were all full of shit. Bobby did do it, but I've heard. But Bobby has changed his story on how he did it several times. But he said at one point that he only stabbed Gary Hinman because Susan was stood screaming at him that he had to kill him, and so he did it just to shut her up. Yeah, well, that's yeah. They both stabbed him. And they're supposed to have bloody held a pillow over his face as well, aren't they? In the end, as well, I think Susan started to hold a pillow over his face or something like that, so she did take part in it. Yeah. Some guy jumped Tackett and said he was going to make him confess his testimony because Caruso had read Charles' LA, LAPD testimony to this friend of ours in which Charles named several people. Well, never had that. Yeah, yeah, fetal alcohol syndrome. Yeah, it's an interesting one. It was Bruna that held the pillow. Yeah, didn't they both? Weren't they both involved with that bit though? I think. I'm not sure. Yeah. Yeah, well, she did go to prison, didn't she? But that was for the gun thing, wasn't it? The gun raid, because she got immunity for Gary Hinman. Yeah, because I've read elsewhere as well that when she was given immunity, and then when she testified, Bobby gets to cross-examine her or something, and she retracts everything. And so, but she'd been given immunity, so there's nothing they could do about it. Yeah, and she's never admitted to it, has she? No. And when Leslie's confessing to being there, yeah, the Hawthorne shootout, yeah, that was what she went to prison for, wasn't it? Yeah. Yeah, Hawthorne. Yeah, she tried to recount because apparently Bobby somehow ends up getting to question her, so he must have called her as a witness. Yeah, yeah, that's it. He went over with Susan and Mary. Yeah, Leslie never went, but Leslie confessed to it, and Susan also says that she stabbed Gary Hinman. But they both give completely different accounts because Leslie says Susan did it too, but she gives a completely different account as to how. Yeah, yeah, I can't believe that took so long to read out. Actually, I probably won't read any more out of that tonight then, because I could get into like what was said about the book. But like I said, this is volume 78 of the penalty phase. If you're going to read any of the trial transcripts, this is an interesting bit. And I'm going to read out her account of how she says she killed Gary Hinman, and so we can compare it to Leslie's because it's wildly different to what Leslie says happened. Leslie was never even there. Yeah, in Leslie, in the penalty phase, you must have watched my Leslie stream and all that because she said that she was at Gary Hinman during the penalty phase. She says that she was at Gary Hinman's house and she saw Bobby leave and Susan kill Gary Hinman. Yeah, yeah, she left Mary out. Yeah, she left Mary out. She sort of replaced Mary with herself. She said she was at Gary Hinman's and Mary wasn't there. Yeah, but Susan, I think Susan mentioned Mary, doesn't she? Yeah. Yeah, I can't remember. No, yeah, we'll have to read it back. I'll have to read it again 'cause I can't remember if Susan says Leslie was there, even. Well, yeah, this is during the penalty phase. That what I've just read out. Yeah, and everything that I've been reading out recently is during the penalty phase. So yeah, they're all already convicted. Bobby's already convicted as well. So it's like it's unclear why they were trying to say they were involved in that at that late stage because he was already uh, convicted anyway. So it didn't help anyone. It just made them look worse because Leslie wasn't even involved with Gary Hinman, but she she tried to say she was there and she witnessed Susan do it, and Bobby left. Yeah. And did Gypsy get shot during that shootout? So she went to prison as well, didn't she? Yeah, and there's another bit I've got to read out for another stream where they go into the chambers and they start saying stuff, and Bugliosi says all kinds of stuff. But at one point, he says he's worried about the girls outside becoming dangerous and intimidating the jurors and the lawyers and that, and says that they're potential killers and that. Yeah, so they were worried about the girls who were hanging around outside. Yeah, her and Mary were shot. Gypsy and Mary were both shot. Well, yeah. Yeah, well, this is the thing because you can't trust anything she says because she obviously lies about so much. But I think they just told a lot of different stories to create plausible deniability as well. Like, if you create confusion about who gave orders, then it's impossible to prove who did give the orders in the end, isn't it? Sort of thing, that sort of thing. Yeah. Yeah, swordwarding. Well, he used to apparently just slash people, didn't he? He didn't actually fully stab people. He just did a bit of slashing and let the others do the stabbing, didn't he? Yeah, and it was the Satan slave sword, wasn't it? And they were really pissed off that it had been used in a murder. Yeah, yeah, yeah. They all grew splendid moustaches in prison. Yeah. Well, yeah, I would have stopped for a break halfway through. I didn't. I hadn't worked out where to stop. But yeah, there was so much there, wasn't there? I've forgotten other things to talk about. Christ, what else? But yeah, and she was told that there was a deal being made and that they all wouldn't get the gas chamber, and they did. But then that weird thing happened where for 1 year the death penalty went, didn't it? And so they all did get their sentences commuted to life. So it makes you wonder, did something happen? Yeah, I can't remember what they say about that. Yeah, I have to have a look again. I've got all the things. Yeah, time before waxing and the IPL machines and all that. Yeah. They probably weren't even giving them razors when they were in court as well, because you're a high suicide risk, aren't you? So they wouldn't let them have razors to shave their legs or moustaches. Yeah, yeah. Right, well, we're coming up for an hour now. Yeah, I'll let it go a bit longer though before I go to an after show. Oh. Yeah, her leg hair was really noticeable even from a distance, wasn't it? Yeah. Hmm. Cool. Oh, you don't think it's Susan? You think it's more likely it was Mary? Well, no, I think it was Bobby, really, wasn't it? And they probably all, yeah. But they would, because in these types of crimes as well, they make everyone take part, don't they? So you've all got blood on your hands, sort of thing. So, but he wasn't stabbed that much compared to like the later crimes, CLA Drive and the La Biancas. He wasn't stabbed quite as much. The most horrible thing about it was the amount of time he was left dead. He'd been eaten by maggots. That's why there's no photos of him. Because if you read the autopsy report, he was completely, all the surface of his skin was eaten off by maggots. Yeah. Yeah, that's it. Well, they were just, when they said that she sewed it back on with dental floss as well. They were just trying to make it look like they weren't, they were trying to be nice to him, weren't it? Yeah. Hi there. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if I've got the slides from the Gary Hinman thing loaded. Let me have a look. Because I've got the photos. Because yeah, his ear wasn't like totally hanging off. It was on his face. It did sort of hit his ear, but yeah, it's not like as. Yes, I have got it. Wait a second. And then where is it? Oh, there it is. Right. It's not very big, is it? You can't see it very well. But yeah, no, his ear wasn't off. It was actually quite a small wound compared to like what was done to Abigail Folger's face and that. Yeah. So no, yeah, I didn't get any more. Well, Susan fessed up to doing the writing on the wall, didn't she? And I can believe that. I know there's been a lot of debate about that, if the same person wrote Political Piggy who wrote Pig on the Door at Cielo Drive. But Susan said she did that as well, and I can believe she did it. Yeah. But yeah, I've got to read that out just so you can compare it to Leslie's accounts. It's just completely crazy how different they all are. And I've never actually read Bobby's trial transcript, so what actually got said at Bobby's trial? Yeah. Yeah. Pictures of him and right, yeah. There's no pictures of him, yeah, because his body wasn't found for about a week, was it? So he got eaten by maggots so badly. The pictures must just be so horrible. Not even any of him on the slab or anything. Yeah. Yeah, well, what we call the autopsy report as well. What we're actually seeing is just the inquest report. So we're only seeing the bits of the autopsy report that got shown during the inquest. So like we're not seeing the full autopsy reports as well. We've got the inquest reports, I think. Yeah, yeah. Hinman was the one because it took them so long to find his body. No one found him for like 7 days, did they? So he didn't turn up to his Buddhist monk meeting, and they went around his house to see if he was all right and found him. But it was like a few days because Bobby went back once, didn't he, to try and rub the writing off the wall, but it didn't work. Stuff like that. But Bobby also said that he did the writing on the wall. Yeah. So Bobby's also said he did the writing on the wall. I know Bobby's supposed to have gone back to try and clean the writing off the wall as well for some reason. Yeah. Yeah, that's it. Because I'd never seen the I'd never looked in detail at the amount of stab wounds on her back. Yeah, and there isn't much about it, is there, in the text of it? But that's sort of consistent with her running away and them running up behind her, isn't it? I hadn't seen that. It's horrible. And that is like more evidence because who was outside at that point? Was it Susan chasing after her? So did Susan stab her at some point? Because I don't believe that Susan actually delivered the fatal blow to her chest, but knowing how many stab wounds there were in her back now, I'm more inclined to believe she might have stabbed her while she was outside trying to run away and created some of the blood that was by the bush or on the porch or whatever, yeah. Yeah, that's why it looks faded, yeah, because someone had tried to, remove it. I think it says something about that in the police reports for it that I found, yeah. Yeah, and Bobby said something about one of the girls said Bobby had said he could hear the maggots moving, eating him when he went back. No, what Bobby said that it was when he went back he did the writing. No, because I'd always heard that it was they did it and then he went back and tried to remove it for some reason. Yeah, you don't have to fit it all in one go, said the actress to the bishop. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, there's so much that she said that's crazy though as well. And when she goes into how they conned her into writing the book, into telling the story and her book and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, right. Well, it's been going over an hour now, so I'm going to finish this one and give me 5 minutes, and I'll come back and do an after show, and we'll talk more about this. And yeah, what I'm going to do next week now, so I don't know yet. So many directions you could go because there's more. I think I want to read out what the conversation that they had in the chambers because that's crazy as well. Because you get the lawyers. I've posted it in my group if you're in my Facebook group. But there's a bit where Day Shin and another lawyer says to Bugliosi in the judge's chambers, "Yeah, Caballero told us that you'd said there was a deal, that you had a deal or something as well." So it's not just Susan was saying that. The lawyers actually heard that from Caballero. So that's crazy. Yeah, yeah. Did DNA prove it? I don't know. I've never heard that they did DNA test the blood. I thought that we were still just going off the blood type evidence. I've never heard that, yeah, DNA has proved it yet. Yeah, because I don't know how well the evidence was preserved in that. Yeah, did they preserve the slides well enough for them to get DNA? Because that's something I've always wondered. Did they preserve any of the stuff, like the clothing that Abigail Folger and Sharon Tate had on and that? Because Sharon Tate did have a bikini on and some kind of baby doll nightdress, didn't she? Yeah, and they fucked up the evidence with Abigail Folger as well. They threw a sheet over her, apparently. Probably because the flies were getting on her. And then they left the sheet at the crime scene, though. They didn't take the sheet with her. So, like, when they pulled the sheet off her, they could have pulled off loads of evidence on that sheet and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. Yeah, it's the blood type. Yeah. Yeah, the dog stealing the knife at Cielo. She saw the suddenly, yeah, that's in a grand jury testimony, isn't she? She just suddenly randomly says, and I looked out and there was a dog stood at the window. What about Larry as well? Jesus Christ, where was that? That was in when I think that's when she's getting cross-examined by Bugliosi. I've read out so much of it recently. There's a bit where they suddenly mention the name Larry. Like, who the fuck's Larry? Is that the second man that was there? Has there been some bloke that we've not heard of yet? Larry. Yeah, I think it's blood type. As far as I know, they have never done DNA investigations of this, unless they haven't just haven't released the results of that. You would hope they would. Yeah, the second man is Larry, the second man. Did they accidentally drop it? Yeah. Yeah, are you in my group, Acapella? Because I've shared an article. Josh Casey found an article, and I'm too tight to pay for the subscription. You have to pay to look at this website to see the full article. So he's just sent me screenshots of some of it. But there's an article from I think it's the 3rd of December, so like 2 days before a grand jury testimony, where Caballero's interviewed, and he says something about there were 2 men that went to CLO Drive, 3 girls and 2 men or something like that. It was probably just a mistake in the press, or he hadn't got the story straight, or whatever. But fucking, it seems intriguing. Yeah, that's it. There was no blood on her knife, and she says in a testimony during the sentencing phase that Linda was in the living room to give her knife because she gave her another knife, so she did have a knife in the end. Yeah, I think. Oh, is it on Cielo Drive? It must be on Cielo Drive. Can have a look now. Actually, why not? Oh, it's not reading from it now. But yeah, just show you how looking at the transcripts on Cielo Drive works. Right, this is for everyone's first trial. If you go here, there's all the different trials. People versus Bosley. Yes, it is. Oh, what? It's a much shorter one then. Only 2 volumes. Yeah, I could read some of that out. Because I think what does no, Linda wouldn't testify this one, would she? She didn't know nothing about this. Did they ever call Susan? Oh, if they did, it's not down. Oh, Kitty Lutzinger. Yeah, it's called though. So how did Susan get tried for that then? Did Susan get tried separately for Hinman? No, I'm confused. So she wasn't tried with Bobby for Hinman. What's that? The knife that isn't stainless steel needs a layer of oil to keep it from rusting. Hmm. Oh yeah, a knife that had some kind of oil on it. Yeah, people would put. Yeah, that's what he was saying. You would put oil on a knife to stop it getting rusty. Yeah, if you had a work knife or whatever that you used. Yeah. Oh no, that. Yeah, I'm just about to end this one because we've been going over an hour now, and but I will come back in like about 5 minutes and go live again, and we'll do an after show. So it's just like more casual chatting. And she pled guilty for the Himmler murder. Also, that's why she didn't have to go to court because she just pled guilty. Thankfully. Yeah. Yeah, that sort of oil though. Yeah, some kind of engine oil they put on it. Yeah. When you're sharpening them as well, wouldn't you oil them up to sharpen them? I think they would. Yeah, and apparently they got obsessed with sharpening the knives. Susan got obsessed with sharpening the knives. I've heard as well. Yeah. Beatles oil stuff. Yeah, that's what someone just said. Sam said Atkins pled guilty for the Himmler murder, so that's why she didn't. All the oil Beatles songs. It's too easy. Yeah, right. I'll end this one now. I don't know if you've just got here, Captain McDonald, but yeah, don't worry. I will come back in 5 minutes. You just have to wait. Look, yeah, make sure you've got notifications turned on if you're subscribed to the channel. Oh yeah, and do subscribe to the channel if you've got this far and you're listening on playback and you're not subscribed yet. So I'm nearly my subscribers are growing quite fast now. Thank God. Just over 800 now. So maybe I'll be able to get to 1,000 by Christmas. Who knows? Yeah, right. I'll end it now and I'll come back in about 5 minutes. Thanks for watching, everyone. And not sure what I'm going to do next week, but it'll be more of Susan's testimony from the trial transcripts, probably. Okay. See you in 5 minutes.